Hi guys, selamat datang di Rapopo. Everything's gonna be okay. Today I'll be sharing 5 unusual medieval execution. Number 1. Hanged, drawn and quartered. One of the most serious crimes during the medieval in England was high treason, and for those who committed this crime would be executed with multiple forms of torture including hanged, drawn and quartered, extra several forms of torture. Being drawn means a person was tied to a horse and dragged until he reached his final destination. While being hanged didn't mean that the person died from hanging. It means that the person would be hanged until he was near to death, and then he would be released to face the real torture or punishment, which is the quartering, meaning the body will be chopped into the very least 4 pieces and chucked into a boiling water. The prisoner's genitals would be thrown away and sometimes along with his intestines into the fire before he faced beheading. This method of execution was actually carried out throughout Europe, and one of the most famous victims was William Wallace. 2. Beheading. Back in the days, this method of execution involved an axe. Only until later, swords were used to carry out this execution for an instant and speedy death. In comparison to any other medieval execution, this method is definitely one of the least painful execution and most honorable death, which is why death by beheading was only reserved for nobles, knights, and royalty. 3. Death by elephant. Considered one of the most brutal medieval execution, death by elephant was when a person was laid on the ground and later on would be crushed by the weight of an elephant. So this method of execution were usually carried out in a Southeast Asian country such as India, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, Cambodia, and were usually done for enemy soldiers or villains who committed crimes such as tax evasion and theft. However, sometimes the executioners came out with a more creative approach, for instance by fitting a pointed blade into the elephant tusk that cut the prisoners open. Fourthly, death by gibbet. A gibbet itself is a wooden cage created to hang a prisoner. So criminals were usually locked in a human-shaped cage and would be displayed publicly as a warning to others. Some were filled with those who were already executed, but in most cases, those were alive people who were locked and would be left to die out of starvation. Some were filled with those who were already executed, but in most cases, those were alive people who would be locked and left to die out of starvation. And lastly, impalement. Impalement was carried out using a sharpened stake that would be planted on the ground with the point facing upwards. The victim would then be placed over the spike, skewered through the rectum for male and vagina for women. The stake would penetrate the victim's inside until the person eventually died. Usually, the stake would exit through the neck, shoulder, or head. So that's it for our discussion today. I hope you enjoy watching this video, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye!